Good evening from the News Radio, 1120 and 93.7 FM KPNW studios. It's baseball season. I'm Chigger McGee, actually in Bill London. I host the Wake Up Call, 6 a.m. to 9, Monday through Fridays on KPNW with this guy, Gary. And we also stream worldwide at kpnw.com. So I want you to ask yourself a question right now. Do you understand everything about your insurance, medical insurance, maybe your Medicare, house insurance, life insurance? Do you understand everything there is to know about it? Or do you find yourself, particularly when you're using your medical insurance and all of a sudden you're denied, or but there is a copay and it's more than we said because you haven't met said deductible, and then you have co-insurance and you're sort of like, okay, where do I ask about this? I know Sean Sutherland of Ask Insurance. People have so many questions. He even named an insurance company after the questions, Ask Insurance. So when you want some answers, you know who to get a hold of. The guy that'll answer your questions when you ask insurance. All right, here's a look at some of the crazy Oregon news. So, Oregon State Senator Mark Meek, he is a Democrat, and he has said now that he's open to Tina Kotek, our governor, holding a special session on transportation funding. Now, this Democratic senator was actually instrumental in scuttling a record tax and fee increase on Oregon taxpayers to fund ODOT in the last legislative session that ended at the end of June. Now, Meek says he told the governor he would be open for a package that looks good, but what he wants is a statute repealed that would allow road tolling in Oregon. Now, when Meek made these comments, the governor was asked for her opinion, and she had no opinion and no comment. Then, just a few hours later, Governor Kotek announced, she's calling a special session of the Oregon legislature, which will be happening starting August 29th. And she delayed approximately 500 layoffs of ODOT workers until the end of the special session. ODOT, by the way, is the Oregon Department of Transportation. That, of course, would be her fallback if legislators don't come up with some sort of funding package. Then the question is, well, what exactly will the plan be that is going to be in the legislature? That, at this point, is pretty much up in the air. Now, originally, Democrats, who hold a supermajority in both the House and the Senate, were looking at the largest tax increase in Oregon history. A whopping $15 billion tax package paid for by, everybody in the state who pays taxes to fund ODOT, which has shown itself to be a poor steward of money. So when all that came crashing down, the Democrats pivoted and they said, okay, we won't do the $15 billion. How about an almost $12 billion package, which still would be the largest tax increase in Oregon history? Well, that went down in flames. Then going into the very last day of the legislative session, the Oregon Transportation Committee submitted a new bill, simply a 3-cent increase in the gas tax for a $350 billion funding package. And that also augured into a hillside in a smoldering pile. Now, while it's unknown what the goal is going to be this time around, it has been reported over the course of the last week and a half or so that the governor has been in talks with legislative leaders, Democrats, and that they were looking on something centered around a 6-cent a gallon gas tax increase and certain fee increases. But until it's actually unveiled, it isn't a sure deal. Now, minority Republican House Leader Christine Drazen said in a statement, this all could have been prevented, I'm quoting her, if Democrats had come to the table and considered House Republicans' alternative plan to fund ODOT by refocusing existing revenue instead of adding billions of dollars in new taxes on struggling Oregonians. And she also believes the layoffs could still be put off. She said this could be prevented today without a special session if Democrats made the decision to use existing revenue from the emergency board. That's why the emergency board is there and why it has a slush fund. Anyway, she says that the jobs could be protected without raising taxes, and she says, and that is something we should do. Speaking of taxes, the city of Portland wants property owners to increase the property taxes that they pay for parks and recreation 75%. Now, according to Axios, the city spends $233 per resident on parks per year. Now, with this new increase, well, it should be noted that the national average that cities pay per person for parks is about $124. So already Portland is way over budgeted. So if you factor in that the median homeowner pays about $177 a year for parks, businesses pay a whole lot more, then the taxes on individuals to this pay increase based on a median home would end up being $310 a year annually for Parks and Rec. Portlanders are going to vote on this in November. Honestly, just about every tax that goes in front of Portlanders they vote in favor of. It would not surprise me if this passes. The Oregon Health Authority is offering grants to nonprofit organizations that focus on culturally sensitive public health services to the homeless, communities of color, immigrant communities, LGBTQ plus groups, and others in Oregon. The funding categories include community connection, empowerment, environmental public health, overdose prevention, and preventing sexually transmitted diseases and tuberculosis. The awards are going to range between $25,000 and $300,000, according to the Oregon Health Authority. All right, during the last legislative session, Democratic leaders in committee in the Oregon House let a referendum that would be sent to voters die without ever making it out of committee. It would have created an Oregon constitutional amendment that guarantees, quote, a healthy and safe climate. So radical environmentalists were behind the bill, which was sponsored by Democratic Senator Jeff Golden of Ashland, who apparently has a direct line to the good idea fairy. And according to critics, that bill, had it moved on, gone to a vote, and be passed, would open the door to all-out environmentalist warfare and lawfare in the state of Oregon, stifling growth, stifling business, sending prices in the state soaring. Now, supporters of the idea have decided, well, if we can't get it through the legislature, we'll take it to an initiative petition and put it on the ballot. And that would be Initiative Petition 45, as it's currently being called. Now, this particular bill, it's not a bill, this particular petition has exactly what would be in the Constitution were it to pass, the verbiage, the wording. Let's read some of it. Quote, all people, including children and future generations, have the inherent fundamental right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment, including but not limited to clean air, clean water, thriving ecosystems, and stable climate system. It would also go on constitutionally to demand, quote, all of Oregon's public natural resources are the common property of all of the people, including generations yet to come. Now, all this sounds fine and good until you get to, well, exactly how do you define clean, and how clean is clean, and how safe is safe? And how and what do you mean by healthy environment? Do you see where I'm going with this, and where lawfare would all of a sudden become a multi-billion-dollar a year job for law firms in the state? The final language still needs to be approved by the Oregon Attorney General's office. Then supporters will go out and start collecting more than 150,000 signatures to put it on the ballot on next year's November election. So I am now referring to this as the Rayfield template. And it goes something like this. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield joins 20 other attorneys general in suing the Trump administration. Yeah, all I need to do is copy and paste that. These stories come out about every day. Anyway, what he's suing over this time is what he and other attorneys general referred to as an unlawful attempt to restrict access to critical health, education, and social service programs. Now, essentially, the federal rules were changed for federal grants, and several agencies halted the use of federal grants for things here in Oregon, by the way, those agencies did, for things like Head Start and community health centers. The guidelines changed on July 10th. Guidelines change. It's part of the deal. But the states now claim the major shift in practice came with no infrastructure in place for, in their words, for states to verify the immigration status of participants. Well, there's quite a few states that actually are able to do that. Apparently, I guess Oregon leaders can't pick up a phone and just ask, so how are you doing this? Oregon's Head Start program, and this is kind of part of this last story, Oregon's Head Start programs are waiting for guidance from the state and the federal government after, again, the rule change that said that non-citizen children 5 and younger could no longer participate in the National Early Childhood Care Program. Now, according to U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., he said the Head Start program, quote, diverted hardworking American tax dollars to incentivize illegal immigration. Now, Oregon's specific numbers aren't available of how many non-legal children might be taught here in Oregon. We don't know the numbers because, well, the state's Head Start program does not collect any information on immigration status. The new federal rules also spurred a multi-state coalition of Head Start providers, including those in Oregon, to update a lawsuit they'd already filed against Health and Human Services over the closure of offices and restrictions against using funds for DEI. Somewhat ironically, in a Friday statement, the two chairs, both Democrats, of Oregon's Legislative Child Care Caucus acknowledged the fears those cuts and changes to Head Start eligibility have caused for families, child care providers, and workers. Now, I say ironically. They're talking about, oh, all this money is being cut, and it's a horrific thing. What they didn't say, but if anybody was paying attention, Oregon's legislature actually, this legislation or legislative session, slashed $45 million in early childhood learning programs. They did it themselves. But apparently, I guess they were expecting that the feds were just going to take everybody else's tax money from all around the nation to pay for our programs. Representatives Ho Nyen, a Democrat from Portland, and Jules Waters, a Democrat from West Lynn, said they would continue working to protect access to child care and investing money in the system. So the state of Oregon has agreed now to pay $15 million. And who are they paying it to? Well, they've been sued again. And who are they paying it to? Their own employees. So what happened is that state employees experienced hellish issues with their paychecks after the state switched to a new payroll system in December of 2022. And we talked about this, a year and a half, 2 years ago. So per the settlement, every hourly worker in the state, and some of those who've already quit, as well as most salaried employees who work for the state at any point between December of 2022 and June 23rd of this year, are eligible for payments ranging from anywhere from $100 to about $3,100. depending on their employment status and the damages they incurred as a result of the payroll errors. Now, we'll get kind of into this payment schedule. So a Multnomah County Circuit Court judge approved the settlement 2 years after 2 employees first sued the state, and they alleged widespread payment errors, and they wanted Oregon to immediately correct the issues. So let's go through some of the payment errors. Number 1, people weren't even getting paid. 2, people were getting underpaid. 2, people all of a sudden had their insurance lapse because, well, that didn't get included. Their insurance benefits, as far as our pension payments, were getting goofed up. Their vacation time was getting goofed up. Their sick leave was getting goofed up. Some were overpaid. And then when the state went to claw it back through the new payroll system, they actually ended up paying more than they owed. And this was widespread. And initially, the state said, well, it's not that big of a problem. So this is part of the settlement. As part of it, the State Department of Administrative Services acknowledged in an apology letter to Oregon workers that, quote, it failed to fulfill the responsibility of paying all employees accurately and on time after they launched the Workday payroll system. This is the interesting part. Remember, this went online in December of 2022. They were required, as part of this settlement, to also acknowledge the state is still currently addressing issues in the system. In other words, we're now 4 years in, almost, and they still don't have it working right? Honestly, the state got off really easy on this. Per the settlement agreement, all non-exempt state employees, typically hourly workers, are going to get a minimum payment of $100. Non-exempt employees who no longer work for the state will receive at least $112. Whoopee. All employees can also submit additional claims up to $500 if they incurred personal expenses because of the payroll issues, like extra bank fees. But, and here's where the state is being so magnanimous and where they're really getting off easy. If you lost your house because you couldn't make the payments because of the state's dithering and botched rollout, or you lost your car, or you went through a significant life-altering event because of the errors, you'll get paid $2,500. That'll help make you whole. You lost your house because the state couldn't figure out how to do its payroll, and a number of people did lose their houses for this, while the state, in its, magnanimous nature, will give you $2,500. Honestly, I can't believe that the two sides settled on this. All right, there you have it. This look at the crazy Oregon news brought to you by Sean Sutherland. He's with Ask Insurance. You have questions, you need answers, you need to ask insurance. All right, Rick, time for you to roll out the reel.